What is up, y'all? Welcome back to FitFrens. So today I'm going to give you guys a little beginner's guide here on everything you need to prepare yourself and your car for the track. So let's start with some basic upgrades, right? So I would say that tires are probably the second most important upgrade that you can do because, well, tires are the one thing keeping your car in contact with the road, right? So upgrading wheels and tires. Wheels, you don't really need to upgrade, honestly. Generally speaking, OEM wheels are better than most cheap aftermarket wheels, but tires, that's definitely something you really want to upgrade. And wheels, you generally just upgrade in quotes because you need something to mount your dedicated track tires on so you can easily swap out your street and track wheels and tires. So here I have a set of really sticky 200 treadwear tires, and I wouldn't say that 200 treadwears are really fully necessary. In some ways it can kind of hinder a new driver because you're not going to learn as much on a sticky tire as you would on something that's a little less forgiving. So really I would argue that you can get away with something like just a high performance summer tire, but if you want to ball out, get yourself some sticky tires and really feel what it's like to have a lot more grip than what you would anticipate, go for it. Now, something that you're going to want to do before you go to the track is just some basic maintenance. You're going to want to make sure that your suspension is in good shape. So a good way to do that is to just jack the car up like I have here, and then you just simply wiggle the wheel. See if you hear any clunks and just make sure everything moves together. So I'm looking good here. So now I'm going to take the wheel off and I'm going to look at some suspension with you. So for your suspension, right, you're going to be looking at things like the boots for your tie rod ball joints, the boots for your control arm ball joints, and then your axle boots, your end links. Just make sure everything's tight, make sure it's all connected, make sure there's no rips, and make sure that's, you know, in good condition to get probably the hardest thrashing that it's going to get in its lifetime. Here's your tie rod, control arm, axle boot, and then just a general visual inspection. Make sure everything looks like it's where it should be, you know? So that brings us to any upgrades for suspension. And as you can see here, I'm on stock suspension and I tracked this car all year last year. You're going to get the same phrase said a lot where seat time over mods. So if you're spending all your money on mods and excuses for reasons why your car is not track ready, you're not getting seat time. If you're not getting seat time, you're not getting any better and you're not having fun on track. So what would you rather spend your money on? Tickets to go to the track or mods to track prep your car, but you never actually make it there? So let's talk about the most important part of your track prep, your braking system. So you want to make sure your brakes are in the best condition they can possibly be in because they are going to be the one thing that stops you from smacking into a wall or another person. Your brakes are also going to be taking the biggest beating that they ever have in their entire life, multiple times every single lap for probably at least a 15-minute session. So you're going to be taxing them way more than you ever could possibly do on the street. So you got to prepare them for that. How do you do that? So let's start with some basic maintenance, right? So you want to make sure that your caliper here, the slides on either side move freely, and I'll show you that in a clip here. But then on top of that, you're going to want to make sure that your pads and rotors are up to the task. Honestly, rotors, you can get away with some cheap blank rotors. Most of them will handle it just fine. You don't get drilled rotors. They look great on, no they don't actually, they don't look great. They look terrible most of the time. But they're also, drilled rotors are incredibly prone to cracking. Slotted rotors, yeah, they look neat sometimes, but you don't need them. Just get yourself some cheap blank rotors. They will do the job just fine. Now, your pads. Some people say that you can get away with like a mild street pad. I'm gonna be honest with you, I wouldn't even bother with that. I have met a lot of people that had wished they got a set of track day pads because they overtaxed their street pad. And what that's gonna feel like is just gonna be, you're gonna have brake pedal feel or pressure, but it's gonna be maybe a little bit spongy and you're simply not gonna slow down when you're wanting to slow down because the pad is way too hot and it doesn't have any friction left to it. It's just kind of gliding on the rotor. And yeah, you don't want that. So that brings us to a set of racing brake pads. Here I have a set of Hawk ER1s. This is what I use for the track, but I started with a set of very cheap Power Stop track day pads, and those honestly were phenomenal. They did the job just fine. I just wanted to experiment with some new brake pads. So if you have almost any car, honestly, I think that they make them for it. So I definitely recommend those pads or whatever you can find, as long as it's a set of track day pads. Now, the most important part of your brake upgrade is your brake fluid. So the brake fluid that comes in your car's stock is generally just a run-of-the-mill brake fluid that is going to do the job for most street cars, actually probably all street cars. But when you take your car on track and you're hammering the brakes almost every single corner, you're going to generate a lot of heat, and that stock brake fluid is not going to hold up to it. It's gonna boil. So when your brake fluid boils, it creates a gas in a system that's supposed to have a liquid, right? And a liquid you can't compress. That's how it transfers the force from your pedal to the caliper, slows you down. But a gas you can compress, and instead of that force from your brake pedal going to the caliper, it just goes to compressing that gas, and then you don't have pedal. So you just kind of pump, 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 and pray to God that you slow down, and hopefully he answers your call, because if not, you're gonna go for a ride. But if you upgrade yourself to some nice brake fluid that won't boil, you will not have that problem. So just flush your system with some nice racing brake fluid, something like a .4. I just have Motul RBF 600 here, but I've heard good things about, I believe, the Castro products and some others. So just any .4 fluid should generally do the job. And just an honorable mention here, you don't need to upgrade your brake lines, but honestly, it definitely does help give you some nice pedal feel. So when you step on the pedal, instead of that force going into expanding the soft rubber hose, it goes directly into the caliper. So if you're gonna flush your system with brake fluid, I mean, it kind of pays just to do it once, do it right, get yourself some braided brake lines, and you'll be good for a while. So while you're in the maintenance mindset, you're gonna take a look at your engine. You're gonna make sure that you don't have any leaks. Jesus, the wind. Well, anyways, so while you're in the maintenance mindset, you're gonna take a look at your engine, you're gonna make sure that you don't have any leaks. Now, like a little bit of seeping, that should be fine. Like if you have a little bit of oil like seeping out of a gasket, just be honest with yourself and make sure that you have nothing dripping, nothing that's gonna cause harm to other people with it dripping onto the track and making them slide. So you don't wanna be responsible for that, so be honest with yourself and fix anything that needs to be fixed. So like a good example is like I have a little bit of buildup right here near my oil fill cap just from me missing the oil because I'm good like that. That'll be fine. You want to make sure that your cooling system is in all good shape. You want to make sure that everything seals, because your cooling system is going to be, again, taxed harder than it ever has been. So just make sure that everything's in good nick here, and you should be good to go in that department. I lied, you're not good to go yet. You want to make sure that you have fresh oil, and you want to make sure that your transmission and differential also have fresh oil, because people neglect to change that all the time. And again, you're probably going to be taxing it harder than you have been. So make sure that you have fresh oil and anything that needs fresh oil, and just make sure your coolant's not, you know, like 10 years old or something ridiculous. You can run water on track. Actually, some places will actually make you run water versus coolant, because if coolant spills on track, it becomes very slippery and it's hard to clean up. Water, it'll dry. So to reiterate, make sure that you're not leaking anything, and then make sure that all your fluids are topped off with fresh stuff and it's ready to go. Treat your engine nice before you beat the shit out of it, you know? So the last part you need to be track ready is a tow hook. You want one front and rear, and this is just in case that your car breaks down or you get stuck somewhere like in a sand pit. They have a place to easily tow you out, and they're not spending 5 minutes searching for a place underneath your car and holding everyone up and, you know, possibly ruining the session because you went off. Get a tow hook front and rear, and you're pretty much good to go on track with your car. But there's one more thing that I would definitely recommend before you go. So that last thing is gonna be negative camber here. So what negative camber is, if you're unfamiliar, is just basically you have the top of the wheel and tire lean in towards the car. And you want that because when you're turning very hard and all the weight is shifting to that outside wheel, the wheel is actually going to gain positive camber, which is the top of the wheel and tire leaning outwards, away from the car. And if you don't have enough negative camber, the wheel and tire, when you are turning, are actually gonna be leaning like this, and then your full contact patch is not touching the ground while you're cornering, so you have less grip. So when you have negative camber, it'll actually straighten up, and if you have the perfect amount, it will have the full tire contacting the ground when you're cornering hard. It just gives you the most grip, and it's definitely beneficial. If you watched our video when we went to New York Safety Track, Mitch had no camber at first, and then he gained about 1.4 when we put in camber bolts here, which is the easiest way to get camber. And the way these work is they're just a bolt that replaces the bolt that goes into your strut. So as you can kind of see here, there's a lobe here. And what that does is it pushes the hub in or out, and that just allows you to adjust for negative camber. Now these are kind of limited and they sometimes kind of suck. It depends on the exact way that they're made, but they're a very cheap, easy way for you to get camber, and that is drastically going to improve your experience on track because you're going to be able to use all of your tire most of the time instead of only part of your tire when you need it the most. So now that your car is ready for the track, you want to make sure that you have everything you need so that way you're ready for the track. So here's some things that you should definitely bring. Bring a jack, bring some jack stands, because if you have to work on your car, which is kind of likely, you definitely want to be prepared in that regard. You want to bring an assortment of tools. So I usually bring this Craftsman just wrench set. I bring this tool bag with just some generic tools in there. You really don't need too much, but better have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? Something like a torque wrench, a hammer, a light so you can see things, you know? You want to also bring spare fluids. I just have the brake fluid and transmission fluid out here, but like oil, coolant, bring those things. And also, bring yourself some spare fluids, because I'm telling you, driving on track is actually a lot more work than you think it is, and you would rather be hydrated than dehydrated because it sucks being uncomfortable on track. You should definitely bring yourself some food too, but most tracks will probably have some food. Just you don't want to waste your time going to get food instead of being on track or preparing your car or just hanging out talking to your buds. Bring a funnel in case you need to fill any fluids. If you're swapping out brake pads, bring your racing brake pads so that way you don't get there and go, oh crap, I have to run my stock pads now. A tire inflator, and then also bring yourself a tire pressure gauge. So you do want to get a tire pressure gauge because as you drive on track, your tires are going to get hot and you might need to lower the tire pressure, and you want to make sure that one, they're all even, and two, you're at the pressure you're aiming for. It's not so important that the pressure is that accurate. It's just important that you use the same pressure gauge each time so that way you understand what the trend is with where the tires like to be. Now, it's a good idea to bring a spare, but if you don't bring a spare, it's a good idea to bring a tire plug kit so that way if you have a puncture somehow, some way, which I have, you can just plug it and your track time might be up if it's your track tires, but at least you have a way home. Also, a great idea is to bring a tote so that way you can put all of your tools and fluids and whatever you might bring in there, and it's just a little more organized and it helps mark where you're at without having to sprawl all your tools out everywhere. Now, two more things that are very important. Gloves, because if you have to work on your car when it's piping hot, you're gonna want a little bit of protection because I'm telling you, it's gonna hurt like hell. Because you're going to be scrambling to get it done so that way you don't miss some track time and you will burn the hell out of your hands. Just grab some gloves. It's a great idea to have. But then obviously you need a helmet. A lot of helmets will generally do, but I believe most places will require it to be like SA rated, I believe it is. Yeah, just check with your local organization and make sure that you have the right equipment for the job. So y'all, with all that said, you should be ready for some track time this summer, and I can't tell you how much fun it is. You guys just have to go experience it for yourself. I can't recommend it enough. It's such a blast. Even in a little econo box that's hardly prepped, you're gonna have a blast. If you enjoyed the video, if this video helped you get prepared for the track, give me a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for some more content, because this year I will be competing in Grid Life Sunday Cup in my little econo box, and I would love for you all to see it. Anyways, guys, I really hope the video helped you and got you prepared for the track this year. And see you on the next one. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Come again.